They say that money cannot buy happiness, but the lack of it can certainly purchase a whole lot of misery. For 10 years, I thought I was building a fortress, a life, a future. My wife, Sarah, and I were the couple everyone pointed to. We were the sensible ones. The ones who skipped the fancy vacations to put extra payments on the mortgage. The ones who drove used sedans so we could retire early. We had a goal. We called it the Freedom Fund. It sat in a high-yield joint savings account, accruing interest and gathering dust. It was our safety net, our future dream home, our in-case-of-emergency break-glass box. I remember the exact number. I remember it because I looked at it every single Friday morning when my paycheck hit. $45,212.50. That was the number. It was the sum of overtime shifts, skipped lunches, and 10 years of discipline. It was my blood, sweat, and tears converted into digital digits on a screen. It was a Tuesday in November when the illusion shattered. I was at the hardware store. Our water heater had finally given up the ghost, leaking rusty water all over the basement floor. I was stressed, tired, and covered in soot, but I wasn't worried about the cost. A new heater was expensive, maybe $1,200, but that was exactly what the Freedom Fund was for. I walked up to the register, wiped the grease off my hands, and swiped our joint debit card. Declined, the cashier said, looking bored. I chuckled. That's impossible. Try it again. The chip is probably dirty. She sighed, swiped it again. Declined. Insufficient funds. My heart stopped. It didn't speed up. It literally paused in my chest. A cold wave of nausea washed over me, starting at the back of my neck and sliding down my spine. I felt dizzy. Insufficient funds? That account had enough money in it to buy a brand new luxury sedan, let alone a water heater. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling so hard I could barely type in my passcode. I opened the banking app. The little loading circle spun round and round, mocking me. Then, the balance flashed onto the screen. $0.14. I stared at the screen. I refreshed it. I refreshed it again. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and pulled out my lungs. $45,000. Gone. Vaporized. In the span of a single banking cycle. Our life savings have been wiped off the face of the earth. I clicked on the transaction history. My thumb hovered over the screen, afraid to look. There it was. 3 days ago. A single wire transfer. Minus $45,000. Recipient. Classic Motors and Imports. I stood there in the middle of the hardware store, staring at a display of hammers, realizing that my life had just been demolished and I didn't even have a tool to fix it. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. If I had walked through that front door and seen Sarah's face, seen her smiling at me while making dinner, I think I would have done something that would have put me in prison for the rest of my life. The rage was a physical thing, a hot, red fog that clouded my vision. Instead, I sat in my truck in the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Classic Motors and Imports. Why? Why would Sarah buy a car? Her Honda was only 4 years old. It ran perfectly. And even if she wanted a new car, why drain the savings? Why not discuss it? We discussed everything. We discussed what brand of coffee to buy to save $2. Unless the car wasn't for her. My mind started racing, connecting dots I had ignored for months. Sarah had been different lately. Distant. She had started going to a pottery class 3 nights a week. She had bought new clothes, things that were flashier, tighter than her usual style. She had put a passcode on her phone and started taking it into the bathroom with her. I had dismissed it all. I was the trusting husband. I was the idiot who thought, good for her, she's finding a new hobby. I felt like the world's biggest fool. I sat there in the cold, realizing that while I was working double shifts to put money into that account, she was planning how to spend it. While I was dreaming of our future, she was financing someone else's present. I called the bank. I needed to know exactly what happened before I faced her. Security department, this is Brenda, the voice on the line said. My account, I choked out. The joint savings. It's empty. There's a wire transfer I didn't authorize. Brenda put me on hold. The elevator music felt like a funeral dirge. When she came back, her voice was cautious. Sir, I see the transaction. It was initiated in person at the branch on 4th Street. Identification was provided. A manager's override was used because of the amount. Who? I asked. Who authorized it? Sarah Jenkins. Your wife. She's a joint account holder, sir. She has full access. Did she say what it was for? The notes say, gift for brother. Sir, is this a fraudulent transaction? A gift for a brother? Sarah was an only child. Her parents died 5 years ago. She didn't have a brother. She didn't have a cousin she was close to. She had lied to the bank teller to steal our life savings. Sir, Brenda asked again, do you want to report this as fraud? I took a deep breath. A plan was forming in my mind. A cold, dark, calculated plan. If I screamed at her, she would cry. She would make excuses. She would manipulate me. No, I needed more ammunition. Not yet, I said quietly. Don't freeze it yet. I need to verify something. I went home. I walked into the house, and the smell of lasagna hit me. It was my favorite. It was a peace offering or distraction. Sarah came around the corner, wiping her hands on an apron. She looked beautiful. She looked innocent. She looked like the woman I had married, not the thief who had gutted our future. Hey, honey, she chirped. You're late. Did you get the water heater? I looked at her, and I felt nothing. The love I had carried for this woman for a decade had evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard knot of hatred. It took every ounce of strength I had not to grab her by the shoulders and shake the truth out of her. No, I said, my voice sounding flat and dead to my own ears. They were out of stock. I have to order it. Oh, that's a shame, she said, turning back to the oven. Well, dinner's ready. I ate the lasagna. I drank the wine. I watched TV with her. All the while, the number 45,000 was screaming in my head. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I waited until Sarah left for her pottery class. She grabbed her bag, checked her reflection in the mirror, and hummed a little tune. As soon as her car pulled out of the driveway, I was in my truck following her. She didn't go to the community center. She drove 30 minutes out of town to a trendy neighborhood full of coffee shops and art galleries. She pulled up in front of a sleek, modern apartment building. And there it was, parked right in front of the building. A brand new, midnight blue sports coupe. It was aggressive, expensive, and flashy. It looked like a midlife crisis on wheels. It still had the temporary dealer plates on it. Sarah got out of her car. She walked up to the sports car and ran her hand along the hood, a look of adoration on her face. Then, the front door of the apartment building opened. A guy walked out. He was younger than me, maybe 25. Long hair, tight jeans, looking like he played bass in a band that never got any gigs. My stomach turned over. This was him. This was the investment. This was where my overtime went. This was where our future house went. This kid, with his ripped jeans and smug smile, was driving my retirement. Sarah threw her arms around him. He kissed her, but his eyes weren't on her. His eyes were on the car. He pulled away from her, dangled the keys in front of her face, and laughed. I watched from down the street, hidden behind a delivery van. I watched her hand him an envelope. I watched them get into the $45,000 car, my car, technically, and speed off, the engine roaring like a beast. I sat there in the silence of my old truck. I looked at my calloused hands. I thought about the nights I came home too tired to speak. I thought about the vacations we skipped, and I realized that I wasn't just heartbroken. I was done. I was absolutely, completely done, and I was going to burn their little world to the ground. I didn't confront her that night. I needed everything to be perfect. I went to the bank the next morning. I sat down with the branch manager. I brought our marriage certificate, but more importantly, I brought the original contract we signed when we opened the account 10 years ago. You see, I am a meticulous man. I read the fine print. And 10 years ago, when we opened that high-yield savings account, we had set up a specific clause for transfers over $10,000. It was a dual signature required clause for wire transfers. It was an old-school security measure we had laughed about back then, thinking we'd never have that much money anyway. Most tellers nowadays ignore it. They see a spouse, they see an ID, they process the transfer. But the rule was there, in black and white. Mr. Jenkins, the manager said, looking nervous. How can I help you? My wife emptied our account, I said calmly. She wired $45,000 to a car dealership. I did not sign for this transfer. The manager paled. He tapped on his keyboard furiously. Well, usually with joint accounts. Look at the clause, I said, sliding the paper across the desk. Clause 4B. Any wire transfer exceeding $10,000 requires in-person or notarized authorization from both parties. The manager stopped typing. He read the paper. He looked up at me, sweat beading on his forehead. Our teller missed this. Yes, I said. She did, which means the bank allowed an unauthorized fraudulent transfer of my funds. But I'm not here to sue the bank. Not yet. What do you want? I want you to reverse the wire. Immediately. Mark it as fraud. Recall the funds. Sir, the money is already at the dealership. The car has likely been purchased. I leaned forward. This was the moment. The moment the trap snapped shut. Then you contact the dealership, I whispered. You tell them the funds were stolen. You tell them the transfer is void. You tell them that if they don't return the money, they are in possession of stolen property purchased with fraudulent funds. And you call the police. The manager swallowed hard. I will make the call to our fraud department right now. I sat in that chair and listened as he made the call. I listened as the gears of the financial system began to grind in reverse. Then I picked up my phone. I dialed the non-emergency line for the police. I'd like to report a grand larceny, I said, and identity theft. I timed it for Friday evening. The boyfriend, I later learned his name was Julian, was hosting a party at his apartment. Sarah had told me she was going to a pottery workshop weekend. I drove to Julian's apartment complex. But I wasn't alone this time. I had met the tow truck driver a block away, a big guy named Mike. I showed him the paperwork the bank had faxed over. The dealership, realizing they had sold a car with stolen money that was being recalled, had immediately issued a repossession order to cover their assets. That the car? Mike asked, pointing to the midnight blue coupe parked in the driveway. That's the one, I said. Beautiful ride. Shame. Mike backed the truck up. The sound of the hydraulic lift was loud in the quiet evening. He hooked up the car. That's when the front door flew open. Julian ran out, a beer in his hand. Sarah was right behind him. Hey, what are you doing? Julian screamed. That's my car. Put it down. Mike didn't even look up. Repossession order. Dealership says the funds bounced. Actually, they said the funds were fraudulent. What? Julian looked at Sarah. Babe, what is he talking about? Sarah's face was white, ghost white. She looked from the tow truck to the street, and then she saw me. I was leaning against my truck, arms crossed, watching the show. She froze. It was like seeing a deer get hit by headlights right before the impact. The realization washed over her face. The horror. She knew. In that split second, she knew that I knew everything. She ran over to me. Mark, stop him. Tell him to stop. What? I asked casually. It's not our car. We don't have $45,000, Sarah. Remember? Our account is empty. Mark, please, she hissed, trying to keep her voice down so Julian wouldn't hear. I can explain. Just pay him. I'll pay it back. Please don't humiliate me here. Humiliate you? I laughed. It was a cold, harsh sound. Sarah, I called the fraud squad. I reported the transfer as unauthorized. The bank is taking the money back. That car, it belongs to the dealership. And since Julian here didn't pay for it, he's walking. Julian stormed over. Who is this guy, Sarah? Why is he taking my car? I looked at Julian. I'm the guy who paid for that car. I'm her husband, and you must be the investment. Julian's jaw dropped. He looked at Sarah, then at the car, which was now fully hoisted into the air. You said you were divorced, Julian said to her. You said you were a wealthy widow. Widow? I raised an eyebrow. Not yet, pal. But I am filing for divorce on Monday. Then, the flashing lights appeared. A police cruiser pulled up. 2 officers got out. The bank manager had been thorough. When fraud involves that much money, protocols are followed. Sarah Jenkins? The officer asked. Sarah began to shake. Mark, tell them. Tell them it was a mistake. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had slept beside me for 10 years. The woman who had looked me in the eye and lied while I worked myself to the bone. I saw the tears welling up in her eyes, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of panic. She wasn't sorry she did it. She was sorry she got caught. It wasn't a mistake Officer, I said clearly. She forged my authorization to wire $45,000 out of our joint account. I want to press charges. Mark, she screamed. It was a primal, desperate sound. The officer turned her around. Ma'am, put your hands behind your back. Julian took a step back, holding his hands up. Whoa, I didn't know anything about this. She told me she had the money. I just wanted the car. You're an accessory, son, the other officer said. We'll need a statement from you, too. They took her away in the back of the cruiser. The tow truck drove off with the car. Julian went back inside his apartment, slamming the door, likely to delete every text message he ever sent her. I stood alone on the street. I drove home to an empty house. It was quiet. The silence was heavy, but it wasn't lonely. It felt clean. I walked into the kitchen. The lasagna pan was still on the stove from 2 nights ago. I threw in the trash. I went to the bedroom and took a suitcase out of the closet. I didn't pack for me. I packed for her. I threw her clothes in, her shoes, her pottery tools. I dragged them all to the garage. Then I sat down at the kitchen table with a beer and opened my laptop. I logged into the banking app. Balance, $45,212.50. The bank had provisionally credited the money back while the investigation was finalized. Since I had the signed contract proving the bank's error in allowing the transfer, my money was safe. The bank would go after Sarah and the dealership to recoup their losses. I stared at the number. 45,000. It used to look like a house. It used to look like a nursery for a baby we never had. Now it just looked like freedom. Real freedom. The next 6 months were a blur of lawyers and court dates. Sarah tried to call me from the county jail. I blocked the number. Her parents were gone, so she had to call an aunt she hadn't spoken to in years to post bail. The divorce was messy, but the criminal charges made it easier for me. Financial infidelity is a powerful thing in divorce court. Because she had committed a crime to access the funds, the judge had no sympathy. I kept the house. I kept the retirement accounts. I kept the dog. Sarah got nothing. Actually, that's not true. She got a felony record for bank fraud and identity theft. She pled down to a lesser charge to avoid jail time, getting 3 years of probation and a massive restitution bill to the bank for legal fees. Julian? He ghosted her the second the handcuffs went on. I heard he moved back in with his parents. I saw Sarah one last time at the final divorce hearing. She looked tired. She had aged 10 years in 6 months. She wasn't wearing the flashy clothes anymore. She was wearing a cheap suit that didn't fit right. She walked up to me in the hallway. Was it worth it? She asked quietly. Sending me to jail? Ruining my life over money. I looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt indifferent. You didn't ruin your life over money, Sarah, I said. You ruined it for a car, and a guy who didn't even stick around to bail you out. I made a mistake, she whispered. I was bored. I felt like we were just existing. I wanted to feel something. Well, I said, checking my watch. You felt the handcuffs. That's something. I walked away. I walked out of the courthouse and into the sunshine. I got in my truck. It was old. The air conditioning didn't work great, but it was paid for. I drove to the bank. I withdrew the $45,000. I closed the account. I didn't buy a sports car. I didn't buy a boat. I bought a small cabin on a lake 3 states away. A fixer-upper, a place where the phone signal is spotty and the fish bite early in the morning. I spent the summer fixing the roof and painting the porch. Sometimes when I'm sitting on the dock with a cold drink, watching the sunset, I think about that midnight blue sports coupe. I wonder where it is now. Probably in a used car lot somewhere, depreciating every day. But me? I am appreciating. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But I disagree. The best revenge isn't doing something to them. It's living a life so good, so full, and so peaceful that they become nothing more than a bad memory in a story you tell strangers. And $45,000 buys a hell of a lot of peace and quiet. If you're listening to this and you have a joint account, go check it. Right now, go check the clauses. Go check the history. Love is blind, they say. But the bank? The bank sees everything. And sometimes, the person sleeping next to you isn't dreaming of a future with you. They're dreaming of a way to cash you out. Don't be a victim. Be the one who makes the call. And if you ever find yourself standing in a hardware store with a decline card, don't go home and eat the lasagna. Call the fraud squad. Because the only thing more expensive than a divorce is staying with a thief.